2-0. And another loss for Spurs, another loss for Ange Postecoglou, 15 in the league this season. I guess it's a step in the right direction from last year. Last year was 3-0, this year's 2-0. And I think the performance on a whole actually was better this year than it was last year. But you can't get away from the fact that the game hinged after Romero went off the pitch, because I felt like in the second half, Spurs were the team in the ascendancy. Spurs were the ones pushing a bit more. And then, Romero goes off. We both said it on the watch long. Once Romero goes off, we're going to come under increasing pressure. And I think that's exactly what happened. But in terms of the starting lineup today, we all could see, like, if you put the three in midfield that we did today of Archie Gray, Bentancur, Bissouma, there was going to be little to no creativity. And that's exactly what we saw in the first half.
No, it was exactly what we saw in the first half. But also at the same time, we probably saw a side of Spurs that we've never seen under Ange. They barely laid a glove on us. They couldn't break us down. Defensively, we were very, very sound. But the biggest issue is you need goals to win games, and we were never going to do that with that midfield three. And I can't remember how many times we mentioned Romero and Davis in that first half, because they were winning everything, any ball, any loose ball, it was theirs. If Spencer and Doggy looked solid, nothing was really getting past them. And in midfield three, it was kind of bypassing them a little bit, but it wasn't nothing to be concerned about. But the biggest issue was when we just couldn't keep it up top. Like, nothing would stick to Solanke. Tell wasn't really getting at his man. I think our best spit in the first half was when Tell took on the guy and he laid it across and no one was really there. But more, he should have looked up. But yeah, it's just, we all could have predicted that. Apart from Fulham scoring, I think we could have all predicted how that first half was going to go. And it probably went to script. Exactly when you saw both lineups. Fulham had an attacking intent, we didn't. And it was 0-0 at half time.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was very predictable. When you see the lineup, you know it's going to lack creativity. Ben Davis and Romero was getting us out of all sorts of problems in that first half. Because you think about it, if we didn't have Romero in that first half, we're probably two or
It's probably goes to similar to last year's game when we played them. It's probably very similar, and the fact is that we wouldn't have been able. A lot of that would have just bypassed. If Archie Gray had started there, we'll go by what we saw in the second half. If Archie Gray starts there in the first half, that game could have been 3, 4, 5 probably. And it was so key to what Romero brings to this team at the moment. Yeah. And even when he's on the ball, some of the passes that he lays into that midfield just to break it up and get through the lines, that is why he's one of the best. No matter what people want to say about him, no matter if people want to say he does this, he does that, he's too aggressive, he's blah, blah, blah. Clearly today you could see that we've been missing him for like
100%. 100%. And I just don't get why he would... Look, you're always going to say, yeah, but we're prioritising the Europa League and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, after this game, we're not playing for 2.5 weeks. After that, we don't have Europa League for another, in 3 games' time or 4 games' time. Maddison hasn't even been called up to the England squad. So why not start a Maddison in the midfield in this game? I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. Like, what's the thinking behind it?
I didn't really understand it. And for me, I'd have probably gone more Bergvall than Madders. And if I'm looking at the bigger picture with Maddison, he's not really a guy that can play 2 games a week and start the next. That's always been his issue for any club that he's been at, and he ends up getting injured. And I think from what I can see this season, they're trying to manage Maddison better than what they did last year. And we've noticed that Maddison's been available a lot more.
Yeah.
So for me, Bergvall's probably played the most amount of games, but he's young enough and he doesn't look like he can be slowing down. So I would have probably gone with him over... Well, that was the other thing. Who would I have gone with him over? Probably...
One of Bentancur or Bissouma, surely.
Yeah. I'm trying to go by how the first half went. I probably would have gone over it, probably Bentancur, and then brought Bentancur and Maddison on later if it wasn't working out. But we were quite solid in the first half defensively that I look at it and go, did Ange really get it wrong? Or was it a case of there was a certain period in the second half where it suddenly went to pot because he had to take Romero off?
No, Ange definitely got it wrong because, you can say we're solid and everything like that, but you need to be taking the game to the opponent as well. You need to be causing problems and asking questions, which we did nothing of. Apart from a few tail runs in the first half, we asked no questions of that Fulham defence. It was way too blunt. No sort of creativity, no guile, no nothing. There was nothing to go on in terms of we were just batting away the Fulham attack. That's pretty much what we were doing. So in my opinion, if that's what you're seeing against a Fulham side, and don't get me wrong, Fulham are a good team, but we should be going there and asking questions, and we didn't do anything of the sort. Credit to him, because second half, he noticed problems and he brought on Sonny.
Yeah.
He brought on Bergvall like he did a couple of weeks ago. I mean, last weekend against Bournemouth, right? He did the same.
Yep.
And I think it did have an impact up until the moment Romero went off. You know, we were the ones in the ascendancy. It looked like we were the one asking the questions. Fulham didn't really have a way to get out. And we should have done more with that dominance.
I tell you what, if it'd be interesting to know from Aj if it was always... Romero was always going to come off in around the 60th, 70th minute. Because if he was, then I agree with you, he should have gone with a bit more of an attacking intent, because once Romero goes off, then you probably go to a defensive more lineup. But if it wasn't planned and he just gets injured, then I feel a bit sorry for Ange in the sense of you can't really predict those things are going to happen. And actually, Romero hasn't shown any signs that he was going to reoccur and get his injury, and especially with Argentina coming up. You know what Romero is like.
He did go down. He did go down hurt a little bit.
He did go down, and that we thought he was going to go off then. But I'm looking at it going, it was when Odeberg came on in that second half, it just changed the dynamics of that game as well, because even when Romero came off, we didn't have our backs up against the wall against Fulham. We were still going with that attacking intent. And Tell, to be fair to him, done well in the second half. But all of a sudden, Odeberg comes on, loses the ball, and it just causes chaos because our back four just couldn't deal with it. And that's exactly what happened. None of them could deal with what happened next. And then it just, the rest of the game, you knew what was going to happen because it's typical Spurs.
It passed us by, but it was just a shame because we were on top for at least like 25 minutes of the start of that. Yeah, about 20, 25 minutes of the start of that second half. Bergvall was adding a lot. I mean, Bergvall was brilliant when he came on. Let's be real.
He was.
Driving us forward, exactly what you expected from him. I thought Sonny was asking a few questions. Solanke was the one that disappointed me because...
Very disappointing today.
Yeah, because in the first half, it just kept bouncing off him. He wasn't able to hold the ball up, anything. And then when he did get his chances, just couldn't get it on target.
No, and that's the thing. And... Look, because Sonny was putting in some great balls, especially from set pieces, and then all of a sudden, Solanke was getting on the end of them, but he wasn't really making Leno work. And I think the biggest disappointment was when he hit over the bar when Tell cut in, and then Maddison, lovely chest, by the way, from Maddison, where he picked that one out from. But he should be hitting the target. And I think that's the biggest problem right now. And I'm a big advocate for Solanke. But today, for me, he was very, very poor in that final third. He wasn't doing the stuff in the first half that I think Ange had asked of him. Yeah. And then in the second half, he just weren't hitting the target. And you're like, well, this is what, you've been brought in to come and do. And I just can't. Yeah, it was a very hard watch. And if Ange was looking at that, thinking that he was going to save his job, in a sense, because that's what we were looking at now for the rest of the season, that one goes against him, unfortunately.
Do these games go against him, though? Because we know that he's making a lot of changes for these games. What did you say? 7 changes from the game in Europe on the midweek. Is he going to be judged on these games, or is he just going to be judged on the Europa League, or is it a bit of both?
He's got to be judged on these games, because no matter how well we do in the Europa League or not, the league is still important, and these players have then got to pick themselves up for these Europa League games. And there could be a moment in, say we play Frankfurt and it's not going all our way. It's these 7 players, say the 7 players that we've changed today, that we are going to be relying on to come off your bench. And if they're not getting Ange ball, as they say, then it's all pointless. It's all relative. Yeah. And that's the key thing when people go, when you make this amount of changes, but you need the whole squad to pick up the exact game plan and understand what's going on. Because if at any moment they have to come on, they have to understand exactly what their job is. And you look at that performance today and you go, well, apart from the players that we already knew about, the other players haven't really covered themselves in glory.
No, I agree with that. I mean, it was the first sighting that we saw Archie Gray in the 6th today.
Yep.
What did you think about him today?
He did okay. He did exactly what was asked of him. To be fair, he was protected in the first half because he did have Bentancur and Basuma in front of him. In the second half, again, he played okay. I'm not going to sit there and say it was anything special, but there was no concerns, which is the big thing. There was no concerns. It's going to be interesting what it'd be like when he has got, say he had Maddison and Bergvall in there with him. It'd be very interesting to see how he copes then. But in parts of that second half, he did. And he seemed to cope with it well, but I'm still not 100% convinced, but he's good on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, his crossfield balls today, I mean, everyone was pinpoint pretty much, but it's just so frustrating because, yes, I know it was a really poor performance in the first half in terms of no attacking intent, but when we came out for the second half, when we made the changes, we were the ones in the ascendancy. We were, and when Fulham scored their first goal, it pretty much was against the runner play. I know they maybe had a bit of a half chance before that, but it was pretty much all Spurs in the second half up until that moment in time. Muniz with pretty much his first touch or first moment in a game. Great finish, by the way. Spurs defence got to be doing better at that moment in time. But I really believe that game in the second half pretty much just hinged on that Romero change. And the 2 goals that we conceded probably don't happen if Romero's on the pitch.
No, they don't, because they definitely don't. Because the way that game was, with the way the back four was, you know, they were controlled, they were in their position, and everything was just... Every time Fulham tried to get in that box, it was hitting one of them, the one of the back two. Romero, Ben Davis. But as soon as he went off, I think that second goal just put what happens when Romero's not there, because Ben Davis all of a sudden goes AWOL, and he doesn't win probably the first chance all game that he doesn't win anything. And it's just like, oh my God, not again. Not again. It's typical Spurs. Look, I wasn't coming here expecting a win. However, I just didn't want to get battered. But that last 20 minutes, there's still concerns for me. And Ange needs to ask questions on his team and his squad on what he's trying to achieve, because it's not like those players haven't been playing for him all season. Yeah. But maybe it's an interesting thing because Porro didn't get a minute today. So Tell, I thought, played okay for those 20 minutes in the second half, which, again...
Had a really good shot, didn't he?
Really good shot. He looked really comfortable on that right-hand side. So we might be able to see that we've got Tell and... Well, I say Odegaard, but I'm not...
Odegaard was shocking today.
He was shocking when he came on, and I think he was part of the problem.
Yeah.
Which is quite strange.
Well, he gave away the first goal.
First goal, yeah. And it's just looking at this team now going, I don't like it where you're up 1 minute and down the next. And that's the problem that we've had all season with Ange. No matter when we had our first team squad, it's win one, lose the next. Win one, lose the next. And we don't seem to get a run going, apart from when these last 3 games where he won 3 and lost to City. That's the first time he's had a run all season, and I don't get it. I don't get it at the moment. Football's really tough to watch. It's not great. However, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I don't know.
It's hard to see some light at the end of the tunnel right now. I mean, we only see light at the end of the tunnel if we go beat Frankfurt. That's where the light at the end of the tunnel could come from. Yeah. But in terms of a Premier League campaign, in terms of the way we're manoeuvring games at the moment, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, you can say we performed a bit better at the start of the second half, but it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough, and we need to be... Where's this gung-ho attacking display and creating chances at will? Where's that all gone? Because we haven't seen that in a long time now. No,
and that's the thing, and that's always been my issue with Ange. When we're not winning, the attacking football that the fans craved and everyone said this is the reason why he's got to stay, I want to see the attacking football. If that's not happening, it's coming to the point where there's no point in Ange. Yeah. You might as well just stick Wells and Mason out there and go, I'll just manage them to the end of the season. Because at this present moment, are they playing for him? They're not showing they are, because some of the performances, some of them are playing out.
On Thursday night to a certain extent.
But is that for that? So for me, this is the question now: is that really for Ange or is it for them?
I've got a theory that some players are playing for him and some players are not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a collective decision. I think, and I think that's natural in a squad. Do you know what I mean? But for 4 or 5 minutes to go, Ryan SESSEGNON comes off the pitch. Comes on the pitch, I'm sorry. And we all just knew what was going to happen at that moment in time. It was 1-0 to Fulham. And SESSEGNON absolutely bodies Ben Davis. And it was a shame that happened to Ben Davis because he didn't have a good game up until that point. But SESSEGNON had no right to win that ball off Ben Davis.
No right.
Great finish. Don't take anything away from the finish. But
I want to see. I want to see the replay on that because, like you said, Ben Davies should never have been on that side to begin with, so that was a bit confusing. Why he had to come across. Is this another problem where people need to understand Archie Gray is not a centre back?
Yeah.
He doesn't think like a centre back, and I don't think it has helped him defensively get his awareness. And even when we saw him as a midfielder to get day, he still has problems with that. And I personally think with Archie Gray that he's going to be more an attacking sort of midfielder than a defensive one going forward. And I think we should use him in that role where you could have Bergvall sitting as the 6, and then Archie Gray could play next to him as the 8, moving between. And I think that could work with then you got your Madisons and your whoever else, Kulu when he comes in. But yeah, the problem for me right now is that I can't see this working out. I know it's the chair, right? That I'm thinking a bit like Sim, but I'm not. After what I saw today and what I've seen over the last few weeks, even against Alkmaar, I wasn't 100% pleased with it like everyone else was. I was sitting there going, this still ain't as good as what I was expecting and what people were saying, Ange is all about. But at the end of the day, he got through a moment against Alkmaar where we had to win. And when it went 2-1, I'm not going to sit there and say I was confident on Thursday. And that's today. As soon as it went 1-0, I think we both sat there and went, we ain't coming back from this. And that's the problem, because at the beginning of the season, if we went 1 or 2-0 down, we were all like, oh no, it's Ange, it's all right, we'll come back, we'll get back into the game. But right now, it's just that feeling of the game's done.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I think when we were on top against Alkmaar, it was obviously a lot better than when we were on top today. We actually created chances. But I saw a similarity in that game that I saw this game, where Van de Ven goes off, it all goes to shit. Today, Romero goes off, and it all goes to shit. And it just shows you how pivotal and how important these centre backs are for us.
And look, when we do play Frankfurt, if we do get a Bodo Glimt, and is it Lazio the other one? If we come up against even Bodo Glimt, if we come up against them and play any way that we did against Alkmaar, look, we're not getting past Frankfurt. Yeah. And that's the biggest worry, is that everyone's now expecting us to put all the eggs in one basket. However, the team is not showing enough quality and enough guile to even get through that tie.
But you can put all your eggs in one basket all you want, but if there's a hole at the bottom of the egg, the egg's going to crack.
And that's the biggest problem. And for me right now, I think Ange has got to get it. Everything's got to be spot on. He's got to hope that these players now can pull him out of a hole. And at this present moment, tactics are not working. You can clearly see that from today. They're not working. And it's just whatever the next step is. And I really, really worry over this next month. Because Chelsea next, I don't know what... Look, he doesn't have to go to Chelsea and win. We never win at Chelsea. But they're on a bad run. And he's got to exploit that.
Dr. Tottenham, at your service. There was a moment at the end of the game, actually, that Sim sent through from the stands. Jumping into the away end and confronting a fan. I'm not sure what it was all about, but there was boos, there was, disgruntlement from the away end towards the players. I mean, we watched it here, but we couldn't really see exactly what was going on. But it's mad that a 19-year-old Tell, who's been here for, a month or two on loan, he's jumping into the away end and actually confronting the fan. It's mad to see. Mate, what do you make out of that?
It just shows you where this club's at. When you're on that level, it's a club problem, and it goes back to Eric Dyer jumping into the stand. The problem with this club has been since then. The fans, the manager, and the board at the moment. There's a disconnect from all three, and it's really hard because ever since that Manchester City game last year, Ange and the Spurs fans have we're not been on the same page. You can blatantly see we're not been on the same page, and I think. And then obviously we had the Bournemouth incident as well. There's been too many incidents now with players, managers and everything like that. And then obviously we've had the protests as well in between. Everybody's in different spaces and it's not ending well at the moment. And something needs to be fixed, because to have the disconnect from all three is a disaster.
The big question, I guess, is will Ange be here next season? Because I'm looking at it and... I said to you on the stream, I got a feeling Ange will be here next season, but the more and more I think about it, and the more and more these results and these performances come to light, barring winning the Europa League, how is it possible and tenable for Ange still to be here next season?
I think he's got, unless he wins the Europa League, because you've got to remember the 0-0 against Tamworth this year. that was a big concern.
Yeah.
No matter who you've got out there, you should still be able to go and beat Tamworth, no matter on what pitch. Any other Premier League team would have beat them that day. The Carabao Cup second leg at Liverpool at Anfield, the way they just completely gave up.
Villa
in the FA Cup as well, and
multiple league games.
Multiple league games. And then Galatasaray away, the biggest mistake I always said was not sending your first team out to that game. I said, what are you doing? And then there's been different games in between. I think when they look at the season as a whole, most of them defeats could have been avoided with better coaching, better manager probably. But the biggest question is there a better manager out there that wants to come and manage Tottenham Hotspur?
Well, that is the big question, because we've seen over the last couple of manager searches, it's not the first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice.
Yeah.
You know, when we hired Nuno, we had a record number of days without a manager. It's just like, it feels like we're just running out of managers now to that will even come and join. And like, who's it going to be? Mason? Are we going to employ Mason? I think one manager that would probably come here is Kieran McKenna.
Yeah.
Another manager that will definitely come here with what you're hearing on the press is Pochettino. But the problem that we got with Pochettino is he ain't leaving that USA job till after the World Cup.
Yeah.
So we got a year void to fill in. Is it Mason? Mason for a year.
Which then comes down to your point, is that you see Ange here next season. Maybe that's what the plan is, because no matter what people think of Ange, he's not going to get us relegated. The club make enough money to cope with Europe with that for one more season. And because Ange will only have one game a week, maybe he'll get the fifth spot like he did last year. You know, it's just one of them things that you have to think about. And the club may go, you know what? That's what he did when he didn't have 2 games a week. And then we don't have to back him enough because he's not in all the competitions. So the club might think of it like that. And actually, you might be right. And they might keep him for an extra year.
Well, all will be revealed, people. At least we've got 2.5 weeks now with no Tottenham until Chelsea away comes round. International break on its way, and that is a 2-0 loss. And I think the last time we lost to Fulham 3-0 was just before an international. I think it's actually a year to the day that we lost 3-0 to Fulham, which is quite unbelievable. At least this year.
That's the question I'm going to ask you then is, every time before we've gone towards an international break under Ange, why are we losing these games? It's a common theme. It's like every single one.
So here's one. Postecoglou has openly criticised Bissouma. He says, I feel Biss sometimes let the game drift him by. He needs to be more dominant. Today we needed more in that position. I had needed him to play because he hasn't played a lot. At the same time, I need him to perform.
Well, we could have told him that at the beginning of the season when he was doing the balloons.
Yeah, that's also true. But... yeah, that's the second time Ange has called out his player in the press. First time was Timo. Second time with Biss. And 2 players that the fans are consistently calling out. So, look, that is our instant match reactions. Fulham 2, Tottenham 0. It's time for you guys to have